Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Andrew Baker, co-founder and CEO of Orca Semi, to the C-Suite Spotlight. Andrew brings over 2 decades of semiconductor experience, having led high-performing teams in applications, marketing, product, and business at Intersil, Freescale, and Maxim Integrated, driving hundreds of millions in revenue. Andrew has helped companies break into global markets such as handheld mobile devices, consumer wearables, and IoT. His expertise in these areas and emerging trends in power management offer valuable insights. After a successful career with major companies, Andrew co-founded Orca Semi in 2022 with 2 colleagues to address gaps in analog IC circuit design created by years of industry consolidation. Orca's mission is to empower customers to achieve their IC design goals through a unique approach that emphasizes deep partnership, customization, and design flow efficiency. Andrew, we're excited to hear about Orca Semi's work and how your vision is leading to success. Welcome.
Hi, Jason, and great to be here and great to talk to you about the exciting things that are happening here at Orca Semi. And really appreciate those kind words. And hopefully I can do it justice as I explain exactly what we're doing here at Orca Semi.
Absolutely. Well, we're looking forward to it. So, I'll start out with a question. It's a question I really like starting out for leaders with technical backgrounds because it really surfaces interesting stories. And so, when did you know that you wanted to become an engineer?
Well, I grew up and I'm going to date myself here, but I grew up in the 70s and 80s. So to kind of put that in context, we didn't have all these whiz-bang gadgets back in the day. But really, I was always interested in Legos and erector sets. We call them Meccano in the UK. So I was always really interested in building things from an early age. But as technology started to emerge in the home, so those of you at a certain age, you'll remember things like the advent of the home computer. We called it back in the day a home computer because you actually had a computer and you had it at home. You plugged it into your TV. Didn't have monitors. They weren't widespread at that point. So I kind of got started in terms of my interest in technology and engineering. Early days through Legos and erector set, and then after that through home computers. So I had started off with a Dragon 32, so 32K bytes of memory. That was huge back in the day, and I loved that thing. I was programming it with BASIC, and people would be horrified by the graphics that it churned out back then. But quickly moved on to a Commodore 64, so twice as much memory, twice as much processing power, and all the rest of it. And really, that was kind of the basis of my interest in engineering. So, graduating from school and going into college was really that basis of, I really want to do engineering.
Very cool. You brought back memories of pixelated Pong images and car racing on a Commodore. That resonates.
Yeah.
Very cool to go through that. Thank you. Moving forward, how did your early roles as an applications engineer and marketing manager prepare you for success as a business leader and eventually as the CEO of a startup?
So, I'll back up even further than that. So it's kind of not traditional in terms of the way that I came up through the ranks in terms of engineering. So back in the day, and I think they're becoming a little bit more popular these days, we had things called apprenticeships. So I actually started before I did the application engineering thing, doing a 4-year apprenticeship, which basically took me from mechanical engineering through electrical and electronics. And really what it enabled me to appreciate is doing things from sweeping the floor, for example, to filing pieces of metal and drilling holes and forming things. It really does give you an appreciation of the skills and basic engineering know-how on how to build things, do things. And people say measure twice, cut once. So it kind of instills a discipline that you need in engineering. So I kind of came up through that, and then my first role in the electronics industry was an applications engineer for a local distributor in the UK. And it was really about supporting customers through their design process, from concept through to getting a product out the door. And then early on, I was kind of interested more on the business side and really than the nitty-gritty engineering. So that kind of led me into more of the business side, marketing, business development, and really kind of going back to your original question, how did that set me up for a CEO of a startup? I think people who've done startups before, especially from very early stage, you have to do everything. I mean, really, all the way from the top, all the way down to the bottom. Even you could take the extreme of janitorial duties, but I think you really have to go into this with your eyes open to say, okay, everything that kind of falls off the side, I have to pick up. And I'm kind of prepared to do that. Back in the day when I was doing my apprenticeship, it was kind of from you're really starting right at the bottom and you're kind of sweeping the floor. And at the time, you kind of hate that stuff. But actually, right now, I really revel in the fact that, I'm contributing even at the lowest levels, all the way to the top. So it's not just all the nice strategic things and you're talking to customers and investors and all the rest of it. It's actually getting your hands dirty and doing stuff that, a typical CEO in a big corporation would even think of doing. So that's kind of a little background in why I think that the early days were really preparing me for this.
No, that's great. I love how it's all tied into kind of where things are now. And speaking of now, for those of us and for those out there who aren't yet familiar with Orca Semi, tell us about the company, who's involved, and what are you working on?
So Orca Semi is a fabless analog semiconductor company. So we're headquartered out of here in Silicon Valley, and our product development is done in Milan, Italy. Basically, the company was founded a couple of years ago by 3 seasoned executives. We all knew each other from Maxim Integrated. We worked together for more than a decade and combined 80, 90 years of experience between us. And really, one of the things that's great about this kind of endeavor is the fact that the 3 of us have complementary skill sets. So we hired a very experienced team and really went into this by saying we want the best of the best because we want to be able to execute on time. So we drew experience development headcount from all of the industry leading analog players. And a lot of them were really a little bit disillusioned with the fact that the bigger companies weren't developing much and weren't developing anything really new. And a lot of these guys really wanted excitement back in their lives. So combined 100 plus chips between them. And really what we also set up is a development environment for rapid execution. So that's kind of in a nutshell what we are. And kind of our go-to-market is really about land and expand. So what we've really been up to over the last couple of years is really developing our IP on a common platform. We identify a couple of vertical markets. The first vertical market is what we're calling smart health. So it's really about emerging technologies in terms of vital signs measurements for healthcare. And it's really about wearables. And the first area of investment in that particular segment is power management. So as people are aware, power management is a big hot topic. And it's particularly hot in areas such as battery management, battery powered devices, miniaturized solutions. And the IP that you need for these kind of markets is not readily available. So you really have to design it from the ground up. So in that particular area, that's what we've kind of been working on. We have our first product. We announced it a few months back in terms of the OS 1000, the first PMIC that we came up with for wearables. So that's that area. The second area that we're starting, and we're going to be announcing something in the next couple of months, is in what we call the smart factory area. So this is industrial automation. And we're going to be announcing a new product in that particular segment in a couple of months.
Yeah, no, that's great. Going from consumer wearables, industrial automation. I mean, that's a very nice, broad, yet very specific area to look at. That's great. You mentioned before, and I don't want to gloss over this too much, but a lot of companies, they're usually typically lucky enough to have, two co-founders. You have three. You mentioned it sounded like there was an advantage, obviously, having three people with as much experience coming in and leading large organizations, having experience putting chips out, lots of chips. How do you feel this gives Orca Semi an advantage in today's market?
I think as a startup, it's really important that you don't just focus on one thing or another. You don't just focus on technology. You don't just focus on, customers, and you don't just focus on, business and the money side of it. So with between the three of us, we have really complementary skill sets. And I think that was one of the key items when I envisaged this company, that we needed to have a balance of capabilities within the founders team rather than just, purely focused on one thing. And, me kind of envisioning this whole thing, I'm more on the business side. So I need people, smart people around me to kind of develop the products and decide which products to develop as well and which markets to go after. So it really is a huge advantage, because what happens is during an evolution of a startup that I've seen many, many times is that they really get stuck. Okay, you can be great on technology, but you don't know how to go to market, or you can't sell it. So I think we've found that right balance. Obviously, it remains to be seen, but we believe that we have the recipe for success here.
No, that's great. I mean, you were just talking about the market, and I mean, speaking about the market, which is, you taking that business responsibility within the company of the executives. I mean, what macroeconomic or even technological changes do you see impacting power delivery and power management today?
So when we talk about the overall macroeconomic and the technological trends of today, it's really about digitization. So everybody's talking about everything in our world, in our daily lives, everything is becoming more digitized. So whether that's the way that we read our newspaper, to the way that content is delivered, it's all about on demand, when you want it, where you want it. So that's really the big trend, is digitization. So the question there is, okay, how do you enable that? A lot of digital stuff, but the digital stuff really requires analog and power to really enable it. So we see ourselves as basically the enablers behind that digitization in terms of power and analog mixed signal circuitry that really allows it to be more power efficient, because everybody's trying to drive to this net zero end goal. So that's really the main change I think we see. And everybody wants lower power, higher efficiency, and power levels are going up and down, and that's really the key item in terms of the technological trend here.
Okay. And I mean, are there, and this kind of is a slight follow-up, and you may have already covered it there with that that recent comment about that trend and power, but is there an emerging trend in analog design that you would foresee in the next few years that you believe other executives maybe haven't caught on to yet?
Yeah, I think in terms of the way that we develop analog ICs, I think analog tends to be a little bit of a black art. Digital can ones and zeros. People think it's a lot simpler, but obviously that's a little bit exaggerated. But at the end of the day, what I, as an executive and a founder of an analog mixed signal startup, is looking for is I'm always looking for efficiencies. So I know how the big corporations operate in terms of product development, and what we're looking for is efficiencies. And I think one of the ways which we can improve efficiencies is through the implementation of generative AI. I think AI is a big area, but I think there are areas in which AI can definitely accelerate and help make the development flow more efficient, and easier access to more customers. So obviously we're relatively small, so my goal is to service more developments and more customers. So if I can improve efficiency, it means I can address more customers and grow my business faster.
Great. No, thanks for going through that. Specifically around Orca, I mean, tell us about the types of challenges your customers face and how Orca Semi is uniquely positioned to help them overcome those challenges.
So customers, obviously it depends on the market segment in the application, but at Orca, we're trying to identify, and we believe we've identified in those two initial markets, areas in which we can leverage application-specific capabilities to really solve those important challenges for our customers. And I tell this to my customers as well as everybody who asks me that question is, you can pretty much build today anything you want out of discrete components. The industry has been around for long enough that pretty much everything has been done in some shape or form. The challenge really is going forward is, can I fit it in that particular form factor that I need for that particular application? And does it satisfy my power budget? In other words, is it efficient enough? Does it implement all of the power saving features of the latest and greatest SoCs or MCUs? So I think really that's the challenge for the customer, is that the big players in the market have such a big portfolio. A lot of their attitude is about, well, why do I need to develop anything else? Just use what I have and you can make it work. The problem is that it often results in a big compromise. So that's kind of where we come in terms of customizing the solution to really fit the application much, much better than using standard off the shelf.
With regard to where your guys' expertise lies, do you have an example kind of success story from one of your customers, or conversely, can you tell us about your team's proudest achievement to date?
So we're obviously new and pre-revenue, but in terms of our biggest success story to date and the proudest achievement, I think, so I said we've been around since 2022, but actually our first design engineer walked through the door in May 2023. So not that long ago. So obviously we had 3 people walk through the door on May 1st, I think it was. So building a company, building a development infrastructure, developing IP, developing a product, delivering a sample. It basically took from the first engineer walking through the door to delivering the first engineering sample was 10 months. So you put that in context, a lot of big corporations that have been doing this for 50 years could probably only dream about doing that today because of all of the things that they grapple with on a daily basis. So I think that is really the most outstanding achievement that we've done to date. And some people might kind of sniff a little bit at that, the fact that, yeah, okay, it's not that mind blowing, but actually to hook it all up and put it together and actually deliver it is not an easy thing to do. So I think that's testament to the team that we've put together, and the determination and commitment to achieve that goal is what's really astounding, I think.
If big picture question here, if Orca Semi achieves the success that you and your co-founders envision, what impact do you believe it will have on the industry and on humanity?
Yeah, I think in terms of the industry, I think it sort of demonstrates that we're entering a new phase, especially in analog mixed signal, because of the consolidation that we've seen in the industry. Due to consolidation, it's really made these companies that were doing the things that we're doing now obsolete. So they've become so big that they're really not entertaining these customizations for even medium large customers that they did in the past. There's lots of stories from even Maxim Integrated. You also talk about Dialog and even other companies that were doing that 20 years ago. They just don't, in their current shape and form, they just don't do that anymore because those opportunities just aren't big enough to move the needle. So I think the impact we're going to have on the industry is the fact that we're bringing that back to customers in terms of, we're going to have a small impact, but it's going to grow over time. I think in terms of the impact on humanity is the fact that our drive is to improve the quality of healthcare by making wearable devices more impactful in terms of the use cases. So lowering power so they can be used for longer times and give more impactful decision-making capabilities to the clinicians. And then on the industrial side, it's all about efficiencies of the factory, using less resources like electricity, making these factories just, basically use less raw materials in the end. So I think industry-wise, yeah, we're bringing back, if you like, the good old days of, being able to have customized solutions, more accessible to customers. And then the impact on the environment is really, the result of that, I think, that could be had over time.
Yeah, no, I know. Both those topics kind of could deserve their own segment, and especially the industrial automation creating things much more safer environments and greener environments. I mean, there are segments and podcasts directly focused on that type of stuff. So, and speaking of questions that can deserve their own kind of segment and can take hours to really kind of parse through, my next question is will hit home nicely and hopefully in a fun way, but building a startup, especially for a seasoned semiconductor leader and leaders, it's not easy. What challenges are currently keeping you up at night?
Where do I start? I mean, it's kind of there's lots and lots of things that I've learned throughout this journey over the last couple of years, and it's probably more things that I've learned in probably 10 years within a corporate environment in terms of how things actually work and operate. There's lots of things that other people take care of that basically there's nobody else to take care of. You have to take care of it yourself. And it ranges from, setting up a corporate structure to finances to, worrying about human resources issues and regional human resources issues at that. In a country that you're not very familiar with in terms of all of those things. So, one of the biggest challenges initially was to set up the infrastructure in Italy, which, anybody who's used to thinking about your bureaucracy, it's quite bureaucratic. So you can imagine some of the challenges that are being faced there. But things today, we've put all that behind us in terms of things have kind of reached a pretty good steady state. But the things that keep me awake at night right now are acquiring customers, keeping product development on track, the usual things that you would think about in terms of running a business like this. But the other thing that kind of keeps me awake at night is the fact that, we've got to keep this thing going. We've got to be as efficient as possible, and we've got to keep raising money. So right now, that's one of the things that I'm working heavily on is raising funds for our next round. So that's what I'm deep into right now, and that certainly keeps you up at night sometimes when you just talk to many different people and all have a slightly different perspective. So I would say if it's a single thing that's keeping me awake up right now is raising funds.
Can you share an example of a mistake you've made as a first-time founder and what you learned from it?
Yeah, I think this was a tricky one for me to answer, but there's been lots of mistakes, I would say, little mistakes made over time. I think as a founder, you've got to try and mitigate those mistakes that are really going to knock you back. I think one of the things that really I could pick on was really about hiring. I think early on when we started hiring, I think one of the mistakes we made was we gave people too long to decide whether they wanted to work in a startup, right? So I think what we learned over time was the fact that if the initial reaction is absolutely yes, then they're probably suited towards it. If the initial reaction is, but I want all of these things, then the right thing to do at that point is say, okay, well, we kind of just cut ties and move on. So I think that's one of the things in building a startup is you have to find entrepreneurial individuals that are willing to take a little bit of sacrifice, honestly, and that's what kind of it is. You're not in the safe environment of a big corporation. You're not having the best healthcare and all of the frills and bells and whistles that you would normally get in a corporation. So I think that's really one of the biggest learnings that I've taken from this kind of early startup phase.
Yep, I don't think you're alone in that, but that is yeah, we see that quite a bit. What's one key piece of advice you've gained as a founder that you would share with other startup founders to help them succeed?
Yeah, I think other than what I just pointed out in terms of hiring, I think the important things are, yeah, don't run before you can walk. And I think, one of the things that the three of us, the co-founders, we kind of sat down and we try to think about everything that we needed in 10 years in terms of how do we build this company? What kind of things do we need? And actually what we discovered was, yeah, most of those things we don't even need right now. For example, we had a conversation about an ERP system for our manufacturing flow, and I talked to a friend of mine, an expert in supply chain. He says, "Why are you even thinking about that? Yeah, you don't need that. Excel is perfectly fine for where you are right now." So I think some of those things are really important to make sure that at the stage you're at, don't over engineer it, don't make it too complex, because you can always add to it later on and change. So the critical thing is cash conservation. Don't spend money when you don't need to.
Yeah, that's I think that's really good advice. Crawl before you walk, walk before you run,
Yeah,
or walk
exactly.
before you
Yeah.
jog, speed
Yeah.
walk, however you want to break it down.
Yeah.
Um, Shifting gears, we kind of talked a little bit about hiring, but the market for IC design talent has become quite challenging,
Yes.
particularly for analog design engineers. How have you been able to succeed at attracting engineers thus far?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we focused on earlier on was the fact that we set ourselves a goal to basically bring in the top talent, and bringing in the top talent, by necessity means that you have to pay people, the market rate at least, but probably slightly above, which is kind of a shift from the model it was 10, 20 years ago, where, yeah, you come into a startup, you take a salary cut with the vision of making, millions on the back end. I think that kind of mentality has changed a little bit because the industry has, stabilized and has become very, very mature. I think for an engineer, it's a little bit different, but you have to get that balance between somebody who really wants to work in that entrepreneurial environment, who really wants to be, hands-on and not just stamp in at 9 a.m. and go home at 5 p.m. That's kind of the thing in terms of hiring. And the market has been extremely tight during the supply chain constraints. Engineers were just asking for ridiculous amounts of money. That's definitely calmed down a little bit, but it was a challenge. But I think it's really about finding the right individuals at the right stage in their career that really want to get involved and have the visibility and input, if you like, at the level that you can give at a startup, rather than just be buried in an organization like 15 layers down, just turn up for work, doing your thing and then going home. So I think that's really the way that we've managed to attract people, is that people are kind of interested in being involved in this.
On that topic of attraction, and if you are, let's say you're at a conference and you run into somebody, they come up to you and it's an engineer who happens to be at that right point of their career, and they're curious. They want to learn more about Orca Semi, but they're not really looking for a new job. But how would you persuade them to leave their current company and join yours?
Yeah, I think, again, just building on what I just said a little bit earlier, is the fact that, you've got ultimate visibility. You're going to make a direct impact on the company itself. So really, that's the way that that I'm positioning it right now to anybody who's interested in taking a look at Orca Semi. It's really about, having that impact, direct impact, and seeing the results firsthand, rather than, like I said, you're 15 layers down and you're just developing this little tiny thing, this block in a big machine, and you're going to get that visibility. And if they have something to say to me, they can pick up the phone or they can send me a message and I'll answer. So that's kind of the big difference between just being a number versus a contributor in the success of the company, because everybody has to work. We can't have people along for the ride. That's the important thing, is that don't come here if you want to come along for the ride, because you can, in these big corporations, you can somewhat hide, but here there's nowhere to hide.
Yeah, and if it's not clear for those engineers that are out there at those big companies, the ADIs, the TIs, the on semis, I mean, there's the ones whose ears can be perked up by that type of sentiment, just because that impact is hard to see at those companies, the large companies. No fault of their own, they do good work there. It's just it's hard when you're a contributor there, and there's just so much that goes out the door to see where things go. So I think that's a great approach, for sure. With regard to this, again, this is kind of a tacking on to the previous question a little bit about Orca, but what are two aspects of your company's culture that you're most proud of, and that might surprise someone from the outside?
Yeah, I think this may not be that big a surprise because of who we are in terms of a startup, but the real culture is, nobody's going to get blamed for trying and trying their hardest. I think there's the old saying about fail fast, and really it's about preserving the company's precious resources, and let's not waste time on something that we know is already going to fail. So I think in terms of openness, that's definitely different, and I've instilled that in the team, is the fact that we're not perfect, we're going to make mistakes, but let's recognize those mistakes as early as we possibly can, and then let's fix it as a team. The three founders, we kind of, in the corporate world, you would sort of retrench into your prospective areas and say, well, that's not my area. The difference here is that we get together as a team and with the broader team and say, well, we have this problem. Not one of us is going to solve it. We have to work together to solve this particular problem. So how are we going to do it? And I just say clearly, the person or the persons that are going to solve this problem are in this meeting right now. So let's figure it out. Don't take the approach that, well, that's not my area. I'm an engineer. I don't get involved in these commercial things. I said, well, we all need to pitch in when it's needed. So I think in terms of culture, we've kind of set it up that way, and it works pretty well. And people don't complain, oh, well, that's not my job. We just get it done. And I think that's the attitude and the culture that we're building, is just get it done.
That's great. No, great. How can someone get in touch with Orca if they want to discuss partnering with you for a design, investing in the company, or even potentially joining the organization?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of ways. One is that we have on our website a way to get in contact through our info@orcasemi.com. That's a direct line to myself as well as the other two co-founders in terms of whatever the topic is. You can also reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can make a direct connection, or any of the other two co-founders. And the webpage will give you more information on the company, a little bit of insight into the types of products they're developing. But really, if there's any interest in partnering or interested in joining the company, reach out any of those ways.
Great. No, Andrew, we really, really appreciate you coming on, telling us more about Orca, what you guys have been doing, what you're up to, and the really exciting future ahead. Really appreciate all the insights.
Thank you. Really opportunity, Jason, and exciting times ahead.
Yep, absolutely. Well, thanks so much again, and look forward to seeing your success.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you.